back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, August 9th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to let you guys know that we did qualify for Super Chats. So, a little bit different of a graphic here. So, obviously, we appreciate the questions that you guys ask us during the show, whether it is a question, a comment, or an opinion. We really do appreciate that. But if you want to absolutely make sure that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, it's a very easy way to do that using the Super Chat feature now. So what you do is you click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. Now, if you don't do that, of course, we still have the link, which is gsmcpodcast.net, and that is on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment. So if you don't want to use the Super Chat, the link is still available. But that is a new feature that we have on the show here. Now it's going to take some time to try to find the right things to say doing that now, because I'm so used to saying the same tip or donate and all that with the link, but now we got Super Chat, so you guys are going to have to work with me as we go through that. But so we qualified for Super Chat. So like I said, it's on the $sign on the chat on YouTube. So if you go to that and you want to get your comment featured, make sure to do that. We greatly appreciate it. So let's get into what we are going to discuss on the show today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap last night's preseason games, both of them, the Giants and the Lions and the Patriots and the Panthers. Talk about some of the good performances from those games, give you my thoughts from them. And then in the second part of the show, we'll take a look at all the preseason matchups for this weekend between tonight and Sunday. And then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about Nick Foles. I know I brought it up yesterday. He did announce his retirement, so I kind of wanted to highlight his career and just talk about that as well. So that'll be in the third part of the show. The fourth part of the show, we will get into talking about, some of the injuries. Of course, I know I've talked about them in a couple of segments, but just guys that could be out for week one and when they could possibly be back, or maybe they come back week one. So we'll get into that as well. So injury updates, basically. And then in the final part of the show, I will rank the wide receiver groups in the NFC South. So that's the rundown for the show today. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the preseason games from last night. So obviously, it's preseason. Didn't really get to see a lot of the starters play. But we'll start off with the Patriots and the Panthers game. I did have the Giants and the Lions game on, but I did go back, watch the highlights, and the Patriots, they did win this game 17-3. All the quarterbacks for the Patriots did end up playing. You had Bailey Zappi, Joe Milton, Drake May, Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett started the game. Drake May came in after that, then Zappi, and then Joe Milton. Then Joe Milton played the best out of all of them. He had an impressive debut. But yeah, Drake May only went 2 or 3 for 19 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Jacoby Brissett went 0 for 3. Bailey Zappi went 12 for 20 for 108 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Joe Milton went 4 for 6 for 54 yards and a touchdown, and that touchdown was to Jaquay Jackson, and that was from 38 yards out. And that was a dart. That was a laser of a throw. And he also was scrambling around a lot as well. Joe Milton. He had 22 yards on the ground, but there was a play where it looked like he was going to get sacked, but he was able to avoid it, and turn that into a positive gain. So he did maybe turn some heads last night. Now again, it's just the first preseason game. You don't want to go crazy. I know there's going to be people that overreact and say, oh, maybe he's got to be the starter instead of Drake May, because Drake May really didn't play that much. But again, it's the first preseason game, so we shouldn't go crazy over that. Actually, the Patriots starters did play. I mean, you had Ramondre Stevenson. He had a carry for 11 yards. Antonio Gibson played for a little bit. The leading receiver for the Patriots last night was Kashawn Booty. He had 3 receptions for 53 yards. Jalen Polk, their rookie, had 3 receptions for 14 yards. Bailey Zappi had a fumble, but he recovered it. The Patriots' defense last night had 5 sacks. Joey Sly went 1 for 1 in field goals. I didn't even know he was a Patriot. He kicked a 42-yard field goal. Well, actually, no, 1 for 1 with field goal. Sorry, 42. It was a 42-yarder. And the other kicker, Chad Ryland, he went 2 for 2 on extra points. But yeah, so that's on the Patriots side of things. And then for the Panthers, Jake Luton and Jack Plummer, who started the game. Those are your quarterbacks. Plummer went 11 to 21 for 86 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And then Jake Luton went 7 to 9 for 38 yards. Mike Boone was their leading rusher. He had 8 carries for 34 yards. The leading receiver for the Panthers was Jordan Matthews. 3 receptions for 48 yards there. So, and then as for the Panthers defense, they had a couple of sacks, and their kicker Harrison Mavis went 1 for 1, 41-yard field goal. But yeah, not really. I mean, both games. I mean, the Giants won 14-3 against the Lions, but yeah, not a lot of scoring. But some takeaways from this game. Like I said, Joe Milton. The defense had 5 sacks, so that's really my takeaways. Nothing really to talk about with the Panthers, because Bryce Young didn't play in this game. But yeah, no. The one big takeaway, like I said, is really Joe Milton's debut. So, it'll be interesting to see how they handle, the third quarterback spot. Because Drake May and Jacoby Brissett, are gonna, be 1 and 2. But then it's the other spots. I'm curious to see what ends up happening. If Zappi ends up making the team. But I don't know. You gotta like what you see from Joe Milton. From his playing time last night. So that's really my thoughts on that game. Now let's get into the Giants and the Lions. So again, a lower scoring game than that, 3 points less. This was the score of 14-3, and not really much to say about the Lions other than I thought the defense played well for them. Well, maybe not in the running game, but they did get an interception last night off of Drew Lock. But yeah, the offense really didn't do much. Nate Sudfeld started the game. Actually had to come back into the game because Hendon Hooker took over, the former Tennessee quarterback. And, he trucked a man on one of his scrambles. Was making plays for them, but then he ended up getting hurt, so then they had to put Nate Sudfeld back in. And Nate Sudfeld actually is recovering from a torn ACL, which I was not aware of. And also, if you remember, Nate Sudfeld, he was the quarterback that came in back in 2020 when the Eagles were playing Washington on that Sunday night, And, Giant fans are rooting for the Eagles to win the game. And Doug Peterson took out Jalen Hurts and put in Nate Sudfeld, which sent Giant fans into an uproar. But, so Sudfeld played. He went 13 to 24, 96 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. Hendon Hooker went 5 for 9 for 36 yards. He also had 34 yards on the ground. I know from reading the recaps from last night, people like what they saw out of the rookie running back for the Lions, Sion Vaki, I think that's how, I hope that's how you pronounce it. But he had 4 carries for 29 yards. Their leading receiver was Isaiah Williams. He had 4 receptions for 35 yards. Donovan Peoples-Jones played last night. He had 2 targets, 1 reception for 26 yards. They brought him over from Cleveland last year. But actually, on the interception, though, that Sudfeld threw, the Lions ended up getting the ball back because the Giants ended up fumbling it, and the Lions got it back, although it didn't really amount to anything. Also, Jake Bates, the UFL kicker, made his debut, and he kicked a 53-yard field goal. Yeah, 53-yard field goal. And he's gonna get some runway because Michael Badgley, of course, is out for the year, who is their kicker, and so he's gonna get some runway to be the guy. And we know he has a big leg from the UFL when he was making 60-yarders constantly. But so that's what I have to say on the Lions. Again, I mean, they didn't play really any of their starters, so especially on offense. But but as for the Lions, well, actually, also I wanted to read the sack totals. So they had 2 sacks last night, and then as for the Giants, I like what I saw out of their running back. So they ran for a total of 155 yards. They had 2 touchdowns. Eric Gray had 2 touchdowns. His first touchdown run was a 48-yarder, and kind of a shifty running back there. Made the safety look silly. Made a nice move there, and also caught that wheel route down the sideline. So, maybe they got something with him. Also, Tyrone Tracy as well. He started the game, and then you had Dante Miller late in the game. He was their leading rusher with 63 yards. So maybe it's possible the Giants can have something with those running backs. Again, early on. But you got those guys along with Devin Singletary. The offensive line looked like that. It's improving, which is good. That was something that they talked about a lot in the broadcast last night. So maybe you got to be excited about that. And also the defense, I think, had how many sacks they had? They had 4 sacks last night. I mean, again, it's the first preseason game, but there are some things that you got to like if you're a Giant fan. Drew Lock actually left the game early with a hip injury, but he could have came back in because Joe Shane was on the broadcast when I was watching it, and he said he could have came back in. So, but he only went 4 for 10 for 17 yards and a pick, and that was a bad interception. And Malik Neighbors was open on a pass, and the crowd was like, making noise for Drew Lock to throw it to him, and Drew Lock did not do that. So he missed Malik Neighbors there. Tommy DeVito looked like the better quarterback of the 2 last night. So those 2 guys are going to be fighting for that backup job. But, as of right now, Tommy DeVito looked like the better quarterback. But, again, it's the first game. So, that's pretty much it, though, when talking about those games. Again, don't take everything too seriously. Everything's got to be taken with a grain of salt because it is preseason. But there are things you got to like from both of these games. As for the Lions, look, we know how good they're going to be. This is not something to, go crazy over, which I don't think anybody is. But, maybe you got something with Hendon Hooker as the backup. Making plays. He's mobile. So I think he should be the backup over Nate Sudfeld after yesterday. But that's just me. So we're going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we will discuss the other matchups for this weekend when we return from our first break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the other preseason matchups for this weekend. So let's kind of go through them. We are going to see some starters play. I know, just checking around, seeing, who's going to play, who's not going to play. We are going to see some starters play in some of these games. Like, for example, the Steelers and the Texans. They'll be going at it tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That game is going to be on NFL Network. Justin Fields, I think, is playing in this game, as well as C.J. Stroud. Now, they're obviously not going to play for that much, but at least we'll see them for a little bit. No Russell Wilson, though. But, and the Steelers, of course, still in the Brandon Ayuk sweepstakes. And who knows when that's ever going to end. I mean, at least there's more news that, maybe they are open to trading him. But, the 49ers are asking for a lot for Ayuk. And one of the things that the Steelers are criticized for, at least on one of the Steelers fan pages that I was looking at on social media, is, well, if you had Deontay Johnson still, and you didn't trade him, you could have traded him to the 49ers maybe, and you could have got Ayuk. Because the 49ers want a receiver in return. And the only receiver that they really look at that has value is George Pickens. Because you got, young guys like Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, but you also have veterans like, Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson, and I think Scotty Miller as well. And the 49ers don't want those guys. So it's either either Pickens or Freiermuth, and obviously they want draft picks, but the Steelers don't want to do that. But they're still trying, it seems. But so the Steelers are the home team for this game. They are a 2.5-point underdog in this game as well. But yeah, we're gonna see Justin Fields. I would imagine we're gonna see Kyle Allen as well. We are not going to see Russell Wilson. So. But yeah, that's one of the games that's tonight. You also have the Falcons and the Dolphins. I'm assuming we will see Michael Penix Jr. Kirk Cousins will not be playing in the preseason, so we will probably be seeing Michael Penix Jr., and if not, we'll see Taylor Heineke, who is still on the roster. For the Dolphins, I mean, I would imagine, I think they still have Skylar Thompson, so we'll probably see him. I don't believe Tua is playing in this game. But that's the other game that's on tonight. That is also at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Dolphins are 2.5-point underdogs. And then we also have at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the Ravens and the Eagles, who will be playing each other later in the season, which that should be a really good game. And of course, you have the reigning MVP and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts and the Eagles trying to, bounce back from the rough ending to their season last year. So, Ravens are a +1 underdog in this game. I mean, I'm just giving you those numbers. Although I really don't advise to make wagers in preseason games because it's just, I don't know. I think it's meaningless, but people do it, and I'm not gonna judge, but I do think, wait till the regular season. But that's just me. And you know what? I know people are really, they really want to, get to the regular season so they can do that, and that's why I use the preseason. But you don't know what to expect out of preseason because the starters aren't playing. But if you're very knowledgeable about all the rosters, and you're an expert on that, and you want to gamble it, then by all means. But I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, that's the other game that's on tonight. I thought that the Commanders and the Jets were on as well, but they're on tomorrow. They're on at actually 12 p.m. Eastern time. Jordan Love is expected to play for the Packers tomorrow, as well as Jameis Winston, I think, is getting the start for the Browns. So the Browns and the Packers will be matching up. That's at 4:25 Eastern time tomorrow. Commanders and Jets, that's 12 p.m. Eastern time. Jaden Daniels will be making his debut, so we'll obviously talk about that. I know I brought that up earlier this week. For the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is not playing, so Tyrod Taylor, I think, is going to get the start. I wonder if we're going to see, I don't know if that was made, if news was made there, but if Jordan Travis is going to be playing in the preseason at all. I could be wrong, but yeah, no, I'm looking right now. I see because the Jets also signed another quarterback, so Jordan Travis, is probably still ways away from being healthy, working his way back from his injury last year. But yeah, so Tyrod Taylor is likely the starter, but you also have the other quarterback that they brought in from the UFL, Adrian Martinez and Andrew Peasley as well. So those guys could be getting action tomorrow, along with Jaden Daniels. Other matchups as well. So the Dolphins. Yeah, so we don't really know exactly because some of the matchups it is confirmed like who will be starting at least. But yeah, we can only assume for Dolphins Falcons, which I just talked about. Now the Bills and the Bears. Caleb Williams is going to be starting. The starters will play. So we'll get to see his first game action. So that's exciting. And we're going to see Josh Allen play. So we're going to see him and, him kind of working with the new receivers a little bit tomorrow, which will be nice. So looking forward to that. The Caleb Williams debut is very much anticipated. And, they're going to cover that, I'm sure, on the next episode of Hard Knocks. So that's exciting. We might see, we probably are going to see both Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. The Raiders and the Vikings will see them. Sam Darnold will be starting as well for the Vikings. So we'll see both Raider quarterbacks in action. That's one of the more interesting quarterback competitions is the Raiders. Who's going to end up being the starter? Because on one hand, you got everybody saying, well, it should be Minshew because of how he played last year, but then also, like, from the Raiders' perspective, Aiden O'Connell did, an okay job when he took over for Jimmy Garoppolo last year. So, Antonio Pierce didn't really say who's going to start. I mean, I think both quarterbacks are going to get an opportunity to start in the preseason, as well as we might see them. I think it's safe to say, I don't know if it's safe to say, but I think we're going to see both of them play in the regular season. They're both going to end up playing at some point, whether one quarterback gets hurt or is ineffective. I think they're both going to play, even if one of them doesn't win the starting job. That's just my opinion, but let me know what you guys think about that. We went over the Packers and the Browns. Joe Burrow is actually going to play in the game against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, it looks like it's either going to be Kyle Trask or John Wolford starting. Those are the other quarterbacks on the roster besides Baker Mayfield. The 49ers and the Titans, Will Levis is going to play. Brock Purdy, probably not. The 49ers did bring in Josh Dobbs. I do remember that. So there's him. They also have Brandon Allen and Tanner Mordecai as well. The Jaguars and the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes will be playing, as well as Trevor Lawrence. So that'll be nice. These two guys have gone at it the past couple of years. So we'll be seeing them a little bit. The Chargers, without Justin Herbert, Easton Stick will be starting. But we'll see what the Seahawks do. Geno Smith was a little banged up. Is he going to play? Because they also have Sam Howell and P.J. Walker on the roster. And the Chargers, they have Max Duggan, the old TCU quarterback, former TCU quarterback. And then the Saints and the Cardinals, Derek Carr maybe plays. Who knows? Same thing. Kyler Murray will not play in the preseason opener, so we're going to see Clayton Tune or Desmond Ridder start for the Cardinals. And then for the Saints, you got Spencer Rattler, who's one of the quarterbacks that could start. And then the final two games, we'll see what the Cowboys and the Rams do. Probably see Cooper Rush and Trey Lance, and then we'll see what the Rams end up doing because they also have a Stenson Bennett and Dresser Wynn. Who I actually am not familiar with him, but Jimmy Garoppolo has not looked good in camp, so he might not even make the team. And then for the Colts and the Broncos, we'll see if Jarrett Stidham ends up starting. You got Zach Wilson, who I think all those quarterbacks will probably see time. And then as for the Colts, Joe Flacco's on the team. Anthony Richardson, we'll see if he plays. They still have Sam Ehlinger, Kadan Slovis, and Jason Bean are also on the roster. So they got some decisions to make there with the remaining spots on the depth chart for the quarterbacks. But yeah, so those are all the matchups, and we just took a look at the quarterbacks that are going to be playing. But the one to pay attention to on Saturday, Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence are going to be playing for a little bit. Josh Allen and Caleb Williams. There's some things to look forward to this weekend, seeing the starters. Just that football's back in general. It's definitely exciting. But, so those are the matchups for this weekend. Let me know what you guys think, though. What matchup are you excited for? What player are you excited to see make his debut? I know Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Cardinals, he is going to be playing, I believe, in the game against the Saints. So, we'll keep an eye on things. We're going to make sure to kind of hover around and see what's going on. But, yeah, NFL Network is broadcasting a lot of these games, so there'll be football on from now till February that you'll be able to watch. So those are the matchups for this weekend. What are you most excited about from these games this weekend? And again, let me know what you guys thought about last night's games as well. Again, not a lot of scoring, but again, it's the first preseason game. So, but it'll be nice to see at least some of the starters play, just so, again, that gives you more of an incentive to watch. Also because it's your team. But I think I've also just been starving for football and just being able to watch it, that, at this point with the preseason, I really don't care. I just want to watch it. But, let me know what you guys think, though, about the matchups. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again. Now I got to say it differently once again. So we did qualify for Super Chats. So if you want to get your comment featured on the show, make sure to go to the bottom of the chat menu on YouTube and click on the $sign. And by you tipping or donating to the show, your comment will get highlighted on the live show. I will make sure to acknowledge it, and it's just a great way for the show to be more interactive, because that's what it's really all about, is being a more interactive show. So if you do that, that really helps out the show, and we really appreciate your comments and you guys viewing the show each and every day. So if you want to do that, like I said, we'd really appreciate it. But also, if you'd rather do it the old way, the link is still at the bottom of the ticker of the show segment, GSMCpodcast.net. if you want to do that as well. Because with the Super Chats, you don't leave the stream. Because with the link, you have to click on the link and go away from the video, and then you miss stuff. Now, obviously, you can go back and watch what you missed. But the Super Chat is a much easier way to tip or donate to the show without having to click out. So make sure to do that. And like I said, we really appreciate it. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Nick Foles recently announcing his retirement from the NFL. And obviously, I want to highlight, his performance in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. So we'll talk about that in his career as a whole when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about Nick Foles recently announcing his retirement from the NFL. So, just kind of take a look back at his career, and especially looking at, taking a look back at his performance in the Super Bowl, which I do have a graphic up for that. And, yeah, Nick Foles, an interesting career, to say the least. Now, he's not going to go to the Hall of Fame, but he will always be remembered for the performance that he had in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 52 against Tom Brady and the Patriots. And these are his stats from that Super Bowl. 373 yards passing, 4 total touchdowns in the game, and his passer rating was 106.1. And was drafted back in 2012 by the Eagles, and I think he did play a little bit in 2012, but yeah, he was drafted out of Arizona. He was a third-round pick by the Eagles, and he did play in 7 games, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and that was Andy Reid's last year as the Eagles head coach. But then the following year, Chip Kelly comes in, and, Michael Vick is the starter. And then Michael Vick ends up getting hurt. Nick Foles played in 13 games, and he finished with the touchdown-interception ratio of 27-2. And in one of those games, he threw 7 touchdown passes, and that was against the Raiders, which I brought up, when I acknowledged that he retired on the previous show. But yeah, and it looked like, wow, the Eagles got something, and they made the playoffs. They won the NFC East. They beat the Cowboys the final week of the regular season. That was in 2013, and the Cowboys they had to start Kyle Orton because Tony Romo got hurt, and that was a close game. But the Eagles ended up winning that matchup. They went to the playoffs. They played Drew Brees and the Saints at home. They did lose a tough game there because the Saints ended up kicking a game-winning field goal. But it looked like, okay, maybe the Eagles got their guy. And then he only played in 8 games the following season. 13 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. And he ended up getting hurt. A broken collarbone, I believe. So Mark Sanchez ended up starting the rest of those games. And, Yeah, also the Eagles, Chip Kelly just started, playing around with the roster because, Deshaun Jackson was gone, LaShawn McCoy, that trade the following, after 2014, he ended up getting traded to Buffalo for Kiko Alonso, and Nick Foles ended up getting traded to the Rams for Sam Bradford. And the first game of the year, they won 34-31 over the Seahawks. And that was a huge win at the time. But then Foles ended up getting benched for Case Keenum. And then Case Keenum got hurt, and then Nick Foles came back in. But then once Keenum was healthy, he got benched again, and he had 7 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Played in 11 games. There was times where he was close to retiring. Because after his stint with the Rams, I think he was thinking, well, I did see a quote from him. He said, like, there were plenty of times where he thought he was going to retire, like, if he still wanted to play. Ended up doing so. But, did play in 3 games with the Chiefs when Alex Smith got hurt in 2016. 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. But then made his return to Philly in 2017. And, the Eagles, they were playing really well. Well, Carson Wentz was playing really well. Carson Wentz, if he doesn't end up getting hurt, probably ends up winning the MVP. And, what ends up happening is Carson Wentz, late in the season against the Rams, ends up tearing his ACL, scrambling, trying to get into the end zone, diving into the end zone, and ends up tearing his ACL, leaving the game. Well, we didn't know at the time when he left the game, so Foles had to come in and play in relief of him. But then, we found out that, Carson Wentz tore up his knee on that play, and Nick Foles started the remaining games, and he went on this immaculate playoff run. They beat the Falcons, which was a low-scoring game. Falcons had an opportunity to win that game. Very low-scoring game, though. And then they dismantled the Vikings in the NFC Championship game, winning 38-7. And this is the Vikings coming in after the Minneapolis Miracle, and they went to Philly, and I think they lost. I think it was 38-7. Because if you remember, the Vikings went right down the field on the first drive, and you're like, wow, this is going to be a good game. But that was not the case. The Eagles really took over that game, and then of course we get to the Super Bowl. And Nick Foles was unbelievable in that game. Tom Brady threw for 500 yards in that Super Bowl, but it didn't matter. The Eagles still won that game, and Nick Foles played amazing. And, of course, one of the touchdowns was, of course, the Philly special. He had a receiving touchdown in that game off that play. They wanted to run that play, and they did so. And they did that, and that was a very entertaining Super Bowl. And Nick Foles did throw an interception in this game, I believe, but not that it matters. But Tom Brady was flawless throughout that entire game, and then at the end, he got sacked, lost the ball, or got the ball stripped away from him. He's about to throw it. It got knocked out of his hands, and the Eagles defense got that back. They were only up by 5 points, and they kicked the field goal to go up by 8. And, the Patriots, they threw a Hail Mary at the end, but it didn't matter. The Eagles got their first Super Bowl championship, and Nick Foles will forever be a Philadelphia hero because of that. Now, as a Giant fan, you guys know. As a Giant fan, the history, the rivalry, you get it. But you know what? You got to give Nick Foles his flowers for that, because that was unbelievable. And he did fill in for Carson Wentz the following year because Wentz got hurt again. And, Foles once again making the playoffs with the Eagles. And the Eagles were kind of struggling at times throughout the year, but, they got to the playoffs. They won the game against the Bears, who had one of the best defenses in the NFL that year. And that was the double doink game. So you thought, the Eagles are going to be going on another run again. And they were up 14-0 against the Saints in the divisional round, but then the Saints came back and won that. And Foles and the Eagles, they were driving. at the end of the game, and that pass goes off of Alshon Jeffrey's hands, and that was basically it. That was the last game that Nick Foles played for the Eagles. But look, they're always going to have that Super Bowl, and if it was, and who knows, maybe they do beat the Saints if Jeffrey holds on to that pass. But I did want to bring up, though, despite the Eagles maybe not looking as good with Carson Wentz that season in 2017 with Foles. I mean, they still put together good games, but that game against the Falcons, where it was low scoring, people thought, yeah, no, the Eagles are not going anywhere. They're going to lose against the Vikings. With how that game played out, because it was very low scoring, but that ended up not being the case. Nick Foles was unbelievable in the championship game, and he was unbelievable in the Super Bowl, and they ended up winning that. So I wanted to bring that up as well. But yeah, played with the Jaguars. I forgot about that because the Jaguars ended up, bringing him in, but he ended up getting hurt the first game of the season, and that's when Gardner Minshew stepped in. That was against the Chiefs. But yeah, he only played in 4 games, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He started for the Bears then after that, played in 9 games for the Bears in 2020, 10 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. I think the Bears traded for him. Yeah, because he signed a contract with the Jags. That ended up not being a good contract, but yeah, played in 10 total games with the Bears, and then played a little bit with the Colts in 2022. But yeah, he really made himself known from coming in as a backup quarterback, because as a starter didn't really play as well. But when he was a starter for the Eagles, his first time around, pretty good. Again, 2013, 27 touchdowns and 2 picks. But yeah, as a backup, that's really where he made, stamped his legacy, and won the Super Bowl against the greatest of all time. So yeah, he did go through a lot over the course of his career. But you know what? Like I said, not going to make the Hall of Fame, but he's going to have that Super Bowl championship. He's idolized in Philadelphia. So, and the Eagles are going to do something for him. I think in their home opener, I think. Yeah, so the Foles will retire as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles during the September 16th home opener against the Falcons. So the Eagles fans are going to go crazy over that. So his stats in 71 games played, 58 starts, a 29-29 record as a starter, 14,227 passing yards, 82 touchdowns, and 47 interceptions. But yeah, the Jaguars contract, he signed a 4-year, $88 million deal with the Jaguars in 2019. But yeah, that really did not pan out. But yeah, he's going to be best remembered from his time in Philly. That's the bottom line. So, congratulations to him on his retirement. Like I said, that Super Bowl performance will, that's always going to be there. So, like I said, congratulations to him. And, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about Nick Foles' career. What was your favorite moment from his career? Because, there was more to it besides the Philly special, the Super Bowl championship. Because, I mean, that 2013 season was a very good season for him. That 7-touchdown pass game against the Raiders. There's some other moments in there, but, I mean, obviously I think everybody's going to say, the Super Bowl championship is, at the top. So, yeah, no, that's pretty much my thoughts on Nick Foles. Again, wish him best of luck in retirement. Is going to be remembered for a while, especially in the city of brotherly love. But yeah, so we're going to take our next break of the show, and then when we come back, we will talk about, some of the, I'll give you some more injury updates around the league. With Nick Chubb, DeAndre Hopkins, some of the other injuries, because there's some players that probably aren't going to play in Week 1. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go into the as we get closer to the regular season. Because Nick Chubb is probably someone that might not play. DeAndre Hopkins, I know that was a recent injury, so it's possible that he misses some time. But there's also some other injuries as well that I wanted to touch upon and give you some updates in that regard. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are going to talk about, some of the injuries around the NFL, guys that, maybe might not be on track to play in Week 1. So I just wanted to talk about that. So obviously Nick Chubb, who I brought up before, we went to break. He's definitely one of those guys that could be out Week 1 and maybe not back, till maybe the third or fourth week possibly. Well, I don't know. I'm just saying that. But he's, of course, recovering from the knee injury that he suffered last year, the horrific knee injury. And right now he is on the PUP list. There's no timeline for his return. He could end up missing at least the first 4 games of the season if he's not activated by the start of the season. So, and I know that's probably the same thing with Jonathan Brooks, another player that I've talked about. He's recovering from a torn ACL, the young running back for the Panthers. So he's targeting a return within the first month of the season, but he's likely to miss, the first 4 games if he's not activated. So a couple of running backs there. For the Browns, they still have Jerome Ford. Deontay Foreman returned to practice after his scary injury. So those guys are going to have to, pick up the slack for Chubb if he's out. And Jerome Ford did a nice job last year filling in for Chubb. And then for the Panthers, you got Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders to take on the workload, if Jonathan Brooks is not back, for the start of the season. So, I can't wait to see, Nick Chubb back on the field, and I hope he really bounces back because I do like him as a player. And that was just such a horrific injury that happened last year. And he's a guy that, during, his time in the NFL has stayed relatively healthy, has missed some games, but nothing major like what he suffered back in Week 2 last year. And I know he had an injury in college, which, was significant. But, in the NFL, he's been able to stay healthy for the most part up until last year. So I can't wait to see him back on the field. Also, DeAndre Hopkins, he may at least miss Week 1. We'll see if he ends up getting put on the PUP list. But, he's going to miss. He may miss Week 1. But, this injury, the timeline for him is 4 to 6 weeks. Josh Downs of the Colts going into his second year. So he suffered a high ankle sprain. He's targeting a return in the first month of the season, but he's likely to miss Week 1. They gave Michael Pittman, the Colts, a big contract. They also drafted another receiver as well. Colts got a young team, and that's a team that, I'm excited to, see what they could do, especially with, Anthony Richardson coming back healthy. TJ Hawkinson, got hurt late in the year last year, torn ACL and MCL. No timeline for his return, remains on the PUP list, and may not be ready for the season opener. And we'll have to keep an eye on that. As well as Tyler Higbee, another tight end for the Rams. He got hurt late in the season. Same thing, torn ACL and MCL. No timeline for him. May struggle to be ready for the start of the season. So, for the Vikings, I think it's more significant because Tyler Higbee is a solid tight end, but the Rams they got Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams coming out of the backfield, and you got Matthew Stafford, who's an experienced quarterback. But for the Vikings, you got Sam Darnold, and if J.J. McCarthy eventually takes over, you want to have Hawkinson out there, one of the experienced guys, to help the young guy along. Now, of course, they still got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, but the quarterback situations are a little different with those two teams. And T.J. Hawkinson is more of a significant piece in that offense as opposed to Tyler Higbee. But, you want to have both of those guys out there. For the Dolphins, they're waiting on Bradley Chubb to recover from his injury, as well as Jalen Phillips. They both suffered injuries. Bradley Chubb had the ACL tear. No timeline for his return, as well as for Jalen Phillips as well, because I believe he tore his Achilles against the Jets last year in the Black Friday matchup. But yeah, those are significant pieces on the defensive side of the ball. And the Dolphins, their defense has gone through changes, so they're hoping to get those guys back soon. And the 49ers got a couple of players themselves. Dre Greenlaw is going to miss, part of the season, with his Achilles tear that he suffered in the Super Bowl. And then you also have Ufanga, Talanoa Ufanga. I hope I pronounced his first name. I can pronounce his last name. It's his first name because anytime I hear him make a play, you always hear Ufanga, his last name. But he's still recovering from his ACL injury from last year. A significant piece on the defensive side of the ball as well. He's likely to miss the start of the season. So, those are two key pieces on the defensive side of the ball for the 49ers. And Dre Greenlaw got hurt in the Super Bowl, and the 49ers defense still played well, up until we got to the end of the game, the fourth quarter and overtime. But that's also, I think, because, fatigue. But now, how are they going to be without Dre Greenlaw for an extended period of time? How is that defense going to look without him being there? Because he's a significant piece on that defense, besides Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. And Ufanga's a good player, too. But they were able to, still play well, despite that. But, the secondary is that part of the defense that I do worry about with the Niners. Also, the running game was a problem, too, in the playoffs. Aaron Jones had a big game. The Lions running backs had good games as well. They did get their act together in the Super Bowl because Isaiah Pacheco really didn't have an impact. But, those are, like I said, those are key guys on the defense. All the guys that are on this list are key players. And it's most likely that a lot of these guys are not going to play at the start of the season. It's really just now, when are they going to come back? And, I think, for the 49ers, those players are significant. The Dolphins players are significant. All those guys are on the defensive side of the ball. Like I said, Tyler Higbee being out does hurt the Rams, but I don't think it's going to, prevent them from being a top offense in the league because of the other guys that they got. Cooper Kupp is healthy. I know Puka Nacua got banged up, but I that's something that shouldn't be too much of a concern. I think the T.J. Hawkinson injury, going into the year, if he doesn't start the year, that's going to hurt the Vikings a little bit. But look, at the end of the day, injuries just there's so many injuries though. I mean, it's just it's already starting, you know. But well, these are from the previous season, but still, I mean, but even now, like there, you know, guys are getting hurt. I mean, I talked about the Cowboys lineman that's out for the year. You know, it's just it's not going to end. You know, injuries are just going to keep on impacting the game, which is just unfortunate. But it is what it is, you know. So there's nothing we really can do about it. But let's just hope that we don't have as much quarterback injuries like we did last year. I mean, I know Justin Herbert's banged up. Russell Wilson was dealing with a calf injury. But, I mean, the amount of backup quarterbacks that played last year, that was unbelievable. So let's just hope that we avoid that this year. So, but, you know, there are some big names on that list, though, of guys that might not be ready for the start of the season. You know, with DeAndre Hopkins, you know, you want to see him out there because, you know, you brought in Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd to help out Will Levis, but DeAndre Hopkins is one of the receivers that, you know, already has chemistry with Will Levis. So now he's out, and now you're trying to, you know, work on things with the new receivers. And I saw that Will Levis and Calvin Ridley are struggling to kind of get on the same page on deep throws. So we'll see if they're able to get on the same page once we get to the regular season. But I mean that's pretty much it when talking about the injuries. Again, you know, these are guys recovering from injuries from last year, so we'll see when they eventually do play. But yeah, some big names on that list. So yeah, before we go to break, well, when we come back from our final break, we will talk about the rankings of the receivers in the NFC South. And I also will, towards the end of the show, talk about some comments on some of my videos from some of the segments from yesterday. I want to get into that. I'm going to try to do those, you know, towards the end of the show. If there's any comments that I want to get to, I will talk about it, because there were comments about, you know, the Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs stuff, as well as my receiver rankings for the NFC North. So I wanted to get into those and talk about them before the end of the show. Sorry, holding back a sneeze. It always happens. It always happens. But yeah. So that is what that's what I'm gonna do when we come back. Of course, I'll rank the receivers, but I also wanted to get into some of the other comments. Well, some of the comments that were made on certain segments from previous shows. So, for one final time today, like I said, we'll come back. We'll rank the receivers from the NFC South. So one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are now going to rank the wide receivers. I think I did this yesterday too. We're going to rank the wide receivers in the NFC South, the wide receiver groups. So let's get into that, and that will conclude the show for today. And like I said, I also want to get into some of the comments that were made on some of our videos from yesterday. Again, it was hard. It was hard, but these are the rankings I got. So at 4, I got the Panthers, and I don't really know what to expect. The Panthers did try to improve this receiving core because you got to remember Adam Thielen was their top receiver last year, and Adam Thielen, of course, I think could still produce, and I'll be honest, I honestly forgot he was on the Panthers. But last year, 103 receptions, 1,014 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, he had a good season. And it was his first 1,000-yard season since 2018 when he had that big year with the Vikings. Also in 2020, he had 14 receiving touchdowns. But, yeah, he was their leading receiver. So now you bring in Deontay Johnson. You also bring in Xavier Legette. So that combined with the offensive line, you would expect that, Bryce Young's going to be a little bit better. But, yeah, with the receivers, yeah, I don't really know what to expect. Thielen, of course, is getting older. Xavier Legette is a rookie. Hopefully, he's the number one guy. And then you got Deontay Johnson, who's, a decent receiver, but does have a drop problem. So, we'll see. I mean, last night didn't really do the Panthers any favors because their offense only put up 3 points. But, that's the starters weren't playing. So I want to see, how it all goes when Bryce Young is playing, with his new pass catchers and, of course, Adam Thielen in the fold as well. But I think that combined with I like the other situations better. I would put the Panthers right now at 4, although they did improve the receiving core. And then at 3, I do have the Falcons. Now, they did suffer a blow to their receiving core because Rondale Moore got carted off the field. And they brought him in with the Desmond Ridder trade. He was going to be another receiver for Kirk Cousins. So now he unfortunately is probably done for the year with his injury. And then they also did bring in Darnell Mooney to be the number 2 guy. And you got Drake London, who last year had over 900 yards. 905 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. And the previous season, his rookie year, he had 866 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think with Kirk Cousins, he's going to have his best year. If Kirk Cousins is, the Kirk Cousins that we're accustomed to seeing, he's going to have his best season. And, I think Mooney as a number 2 could be okay. I think the Bears, I think we were expecting more out of Mooney when he first broke onto the scene. But he's kind of been a disappointment. The Bears, look at their receiving core now. And Mooney last year, had 414 receiving yards and a touchdown. And then the year before that had 493 and 2 touchdowns. In 2021, he had over 1,000 yards. He was a 1,000-yard receiver and 4 touchdowns in 2021. But, yeah, it's just been downhill from there. So maybe change of scenery with the Falcons and Kirk Cousins. He could do a little bit better. But, last 2 years has kind of been disappointing. So, we'll see. Like, with the Falcons and the Panthers, you could kind of maybe switch them around. Maybe put the Panthers at 3 and, the Falcons at 4. But, I put the Falcons at 3. So we'll see how that goes. And then at number 2, I got the Saints with Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Those are your top 2 weapons there. And Chris Olave has been a solid receiver for the Saints. His first 2 seasons, he's had over 1,000 yards. 2022, he had 1,042 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Last year, had 1,123 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. So he's coming off of a good year. And with Rashid Shaheed, he'll also be used, returning kicks, returning punts. He does a nice job with that. His first couple of seasons, so 2022, he had 488 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Last year, he had 719 and 5 touchdowns. So those are the top 2 weapons for the Saints in terms of their receivers. Now, who else do they have? They also have A.T. Perry. They have Equanimous St. Brown, Cedric Wilson. So, but those are your top 3 guys. At least on the ESPN depth chart, they have Shaheed, Olave, and A.T. Perry. But, you got Derek Carr throwing the football. Is Derek Carr going to carry over the momentum from last year into 2024? We'll see. But, yeah, right now I like the Saints pass catchers, or the Saints receivers, over the 2 that we went over. And then, of course, I got to give respect where it's due for these 2 guys. And I got the Buccaneers at 1. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, mainly because of that. Now, they also did draft Jalen McMillan out of Washington. It's mainly because of these 2 guys, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Mike Evans, another 1,000-yard season, 1,255 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns, and 1 in the postseason as well. Has had 1,000 yards in every season that he's been in the NFL, and we hope that continues. And Chris Godwin also had 1,000 yards as well last year, and 2 touchdowns. These guys are still producing, and like I said, they drafted Jalen McMillan out of Washington. So last year, for him with Washington, he was a 1,000-yard receiver in 2022. He had 9 touchdowns. Last year, he had 559 and 5 touchdowns. And he's actually, I think he's turning heads in camp with the Bucs. So he could be that number 3 receiver. They also have some other young guys as well on the team. But it is, like I said, it's mainly because of these 2 guys why I would put the Buccaneers receiving core at 1. Because, they also got Trey Palmer. They did bring in Sterling Shepard, which I don't really expect him to make a huge impact on the team because he's dealt with a lot of injuries over the course of his career. But I do like the Bucs receiving core the best out of the teams in this division. So to kind of just go through it once again, so I got the Panthers at 4, Falcons at 3, Saints at 2, and then the Buccaneers at 1. So let me know what you guys think about those rankings. How would you rank the receiving cores within the NFC South? So on Monday, we will cover the NFC West, which is going to be tough because, that division is loaded with receivers from top to bottom. So we will get into that on Monday. But while we still got some time left, I know the show's we ran a little late. The show's actually pretty long. This could be like one of the longest shows that I've had. I did want to go through some comments that were made on some of the segments from yesterday. So one of them was on the Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs stuff, and because I brought up talking about the interview that Josh Allen had with the media on if he missed Stephon Diggs. Now, Dorothy Hunter 4656 said, "You do realize that's a chopped up interview. They asked Josh, does he miss him in camp? Camp is in caps. Clearly he focused on helping to develop chemistry with the new receivers, and he said, we are thirsty for drama." Now, I wouldn't say I think that's strong. I don't think I'm, craving for drama. But I understand from that perspective because, then you're thinking, well, he's not going to say that he misses Stephon Diggs. He's going to, take a different route. And, there are things that he said that he misses about Diggs, but, he's not going to say, oh, yeah, of course I miss Stephon Diggs. We need him. But, yeah, you want to put faith in the guys that you already have. And, I've said all along that I think Josh Allen's going to have a good year. Yeah, the receiving core, you might look at some of the guys that they brought in, and you're like, I don't know if they're really going to make an impact. But I think the Bills are going to figure it out. But I do understand, because, look, I don't want to be one of those people, those individuals that, just takes part of what someone says and just says, oh, that's what they really mean. You got to get the full story. So if it came off as that way, then, that wasn't really my intention. But I was also just talking about, like, I brought it back to, what I believe in. That's, I think that there's a part of Josh Allen that didn't want to see Stephon Diggs go and still be a part of this thing. But, at the same time, it's like, what, we've got to go in a different direction. We now brought in all these guys that he wants to, work with, and, that's what he's going to do. And like I said, I think the Bills, are still going to be a competitive team, but we'll see how it goes now with Diggs not being there. And then the other comment was on my rankings of the NFC North, and it's from a Broken Tubin, and he says, this is what he said. He said, nope, last year the Vikings had 4,700 yards, Lions 4,606 yards, Packers 4,210, Caleb Williams may get 3,800 yards. Lions tight ends had more yards than Reed. So the one thing I'll say is I wasn't ranking the tight ends. It was just the receivers. The tight ends might be a different ranking. But, yeah, I mean, I just looked at it this way. I had the Lions ranked last just because of the depth behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. Because Amon-Ra St. Brown, like I said in the video yesterday, he would be ranked towards the top, like individually, but as a group. Because, behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, you guys got to step up. For the Bears, those three receivers, that could be a great trio. DJ Moore and Keenan Allen were coming off of great years. Rome Odunze was a good college player. And then, of course, you got the Packers who, they don't have that alpha receiver, but I do think collectively, they are a better receiving core as a whole than as opposed to the Lions. And then for the Vikings, of course, you got Justin Jefferson, who's the best receiver in the NFL, and Jordan Addison, who had a lot of receiving touchdowns last year. So, I don't like doing rankings lists, but that's just how I, rank them. So, but also, I did have someone an hour ago, Robert A. Wilson, commented on the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs segment, and Robert A. Wilson commented, another clickbait fraudcaster. So that's nice. That's nice. That is, but that's pretty much it for the show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back again on Monday. And, so with that, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, have a good weekend, and I will talk to you guys on Monday. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that crazy.